Hello, everyone. My name is Guillory. I am an integrative life coach, um, and our special guest today is Carrie. Who were dine? Is that right? Who were dine?
Yep.
Tell me how to say it.
It's Hugh or Dine. Just call me Carrie. That's so much easier.
Yeah. Carrie is an integrative life coach who specializes in transformation. She is a triple trained hypnotherapist. And this is her unique approach is integrating the unconscious work with mindset. And she does this in such a beautiful way. I wanted to have her on, kind of talk about her before and after story, and maybe share some just kind of the type of clients that you work with, the type of transformation that they've received. Because, right now is a really trying time. People are really locked into this fear. We're feeling this collective grief, which is bringing up all of the inner child stories, all of these unresolved wounds and trauma in the body are being triggered, and people are like freaking out. I don't think it's the virus. I think it's the emotions, the unprocessed emotions that are coming up. So I thought it would be a great time to have the conversation with you. So welcome, Carrie. A little housekeeping. If any of you have questions as we talk, as we move along, because we have some of you here live, then put it in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will answer these as we move along.
Yeah.
Welcome. Hi.
Thank you. Hi there. I'm so glad to be here. This is amazing. And I'm kind of going to skip around a little bit. So if there are questions that come in, interrupt me. If something occurs to you, Kim, just pop in and interrupt me. And because I have a tendency once I start talking to just keep talking. And coming from a whole lifetime of not talking, it's like the lid's, off of the pot. And I had no idea how much was in there. Yeah, my life started off in a very chaotic place. And I know a lot of people out there can identify with this. If you're watching television at all and you'll come away with, I can't stand this anymore, or you want to throw something at the screen, or you turn off the thing and go yell at your partner. Those are ways of you to realize that you're being triggered. Something deep in there is bugging you about what you just saw, and it's bringing up an emotional reaction. I didn't know that. I just thought things in life pissed me off. Don't they piss everybody off? I had no idea they were actually rooted to something else that, you could actually get in there and make any kind of changes in the way you think or the way you feel, or have any kind of control, or being able to moderate how you feel. Because I lived a whole lifetime of not having a great breadth of feeling. There was scared and angry, and then there was some scared and angry, and then on really good days there was scared and angry. I didn't know much else, because the world around me as a little kid didn't show me that there were happy and safe, and you can make a mistake and it's okay. This is how we learn. In my world, if I made a mistake, I was a bad person and I better not do it again. Somehow my behavior reflected on all the adults around me, and there was that message that started running. I didn't know it was running. I just thought I was living in a world where my brain, now looking back, I can see my brain was just trying to protect me in the only way it could. And for many years, it just told me, go hide. Don't be seen, don't be heard, and go hide if you can. Because if the big people can't see you, if you're not in their line of fire when they're mad, you might not get hurt. And so 40 years later, what do you think my brain's doing? In another weird way, it's still saying, don't be seen, don't be heard, and you can go hide, and that'll keep you safe. Like, safe from what? I'm an adult now, trying to, make it in the world and, build a business or have a family or whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And yet my brain is still operating on the things it started on long ago. And so I was kind of sitting there and realizing that, I'm 63 years old. So I spent a solid 60 years in that mindset because I didn't know I could get out of it. I tried from time to time in my life. There'd be a a little crisis that would come up, and I'd find a book and read and divert myself, and
Interesting.
then I'd get back on track and go along a little ways longer, or I'd find a support group, and then realize that some of these people are crazier than I am. I'm not doing so bad. So I'd leave that and go on with my life for a little while. Got married, delved into that struggle for a while, and that was quite a diversion of figuring out that he has all these things he needs to change so I can feel better. That was
So you
different.
wanted him to change so that you could feel better?
Well, of course, because I had all the answers. I mean, I had spent up until that point in my life figuring out the ways that I could operate in my life. And now he was doing all kinds of different things that didn't fit. And I remember the day literally that I woke up and looked at him, and it was like a big light bulb went off, and I said, "Oh my God, I married my mother." And I had no idea, because I'd spent my whole life trying really hard not to marry my father. I thought he was the scary one. He was the one that was physically
Interesting.
abusive and physically scary. But looking back on it now, I realized that, physically scary wasn't as bad at the time, because it came and it went, you endured it and it stopped and you went on. But with my mother, it was, I didn't even know what she was doing for years. That there were these verbal messages, these nonverbal cues of that you're not okay, you're not okay, you need to do better, do better, do better, do better. And then when I did, then I was showing her up. I couldn't win. I could not win. I couldn't be bad enough. I couldn't be good enough. I couldn't be okay enough. There was nowhere in her world where I could be okay. And I was a reflection of all, but the harder I tried, I was just a reflection of all the things she wasn't, which made her more miserable.
How did that feel? Like, just kind of take us there, like when you're saying that before going into the marriage part, because I'm sure you took the same
Oh
thing
yeah,
there,
I
right?
took
Yeah,
that
yeah.
all
So
into marriage.
so you can't do good enough, and then when you do good, you're too big for your britches. You can't do right.
Yeah.
What did
How,
that sound like?
how dare you? It felt like there was just that no-win situation, and my poor brain was just on fire, thinking, well, I've been up here in my brain my whole life trying to fix everything, trying to keep everybody around me happy, because I figured if I can keep them all happy, then I'm keeping them at a distance, and I'm keeping myself safe. I'm not making myself a target. I want to do it all right, but don't show anybody up. Just do what everybody else wants me to do, to the point where, now I look back and I realize I totally lost what I had as a self. I mean, when somebody later on in my life, well-meaning therapists would look at me and say, "Well, Carrie, you need to do more self-care." I'm like, self-care? What
The
the
hell is
hell is
that?
self-care? And it's like, well, you take a bubble bath, read a book, have a cup of tea. And I'm like, I can do those things. What's that got to do with self? I don't get it. And it was because I wasn't part of the equation. I had checked out. Um, I didn't ever check in with me with what I wanted, what I needed, because that would mean I was selfish.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was funny, because I was sitting here making little notes yesterday about, things I kind of wanted to bring up, like why did it take me 60 years for that final step? Because it was this convergence of everything in my life. I had made a note here that I was really high functioning, so that everything on the surface looked fine. If
Really
anybody
good. Yeah.
looked at me, if you didn't get close enough, they would not know that everything was not just fine.
Especially if your attention's on them, right? Fixing them and pleasing
Yeah,
them, like mom and
yeah,
husband. So how did it look taking this into because you didn't have the awareness back then, right? You just went from one relationship to the next. So you
right.
said you looked at him one day and was like,
Oh my
what
God,
the heck? So can you take us there? Like, what did that look like? What was the awareness?
I married my mother. I married this person who drinks, and so he changes his personality. So the rules are always changing, and then he doesn't remember things I told him, and I did, or he swears he told me something, but I swear he didn't, because I'm like hyper vigilant about everything around me. So I'm thinking, if somebody's going to remember what happened, it's going to be me, not you, because you're drunk. But just that feeling of, in that moment, trying to figure out, oh yeah, my mother used to do that, and he's doing that, and she used to do this, and I feel like that. And Well, isn't that amazing that being so afraid of marrying my father that I actually recreated that situation with him with those same characteristics somehow so that I could fix it, I could deal with it, if I could make him love me, if I could make him see what a wonderful person I was, if I could make him change his behavior, then somehow I had a little bit of control over my life or the situation, or which is something I never felt like I had control over. And I realize now, oh my gosh, in every part of my life, I was trying to control things that I couldn't possibly control.
So how long were you married?
That first time it was 13 years.
Okay, so 13 years, and then you wake up in this like, okay, this is not going to work. What else was reflecting in that relationship? What did your life look like?
Um, it was it was repeated messages of, back then I was a skinny little thing, and he was like a health nut, and I was like real sedentary and happy with that. And so I was constantly getting messages of, you're not thin enough, you're not fit enough, you don't eat well enough, you don't, and so those were like, oh yeah, I was used to that being criticized, and so that felt normal.
Okay.
And it gave me something to resist against, where I couldn't have resisted against my mother, but I could bitch at him about
Yeah, and
it.
I'm curious if that made it like, okay, like it gave your brain something to try to fix about yourself, right? Because you were
Did.
already believing at that point that you were defected.
Yeah, it did. It did. And the weird part was then I got pregnant with our first baby, and then I started actually, putting on some weight, and a lot of stuff was going on because I had some weird physical abuse when I was a baby, when I was maybe 3, and all of a sudden my body is changing, and I'm having to feel things in my body, and I didn't realize I had not been connected to my body. So it was a whole kind of psycho weird sexual thing going on with I'm pregnant, and these are my reproductive organs, and there's just strange stuff going on. And so I have a license to eat now when I'm pregnant. And so I started putting on a little bit of weight, which you're supposed to. But I'd come home and I'd hear, I thought you were fat before, but you sure proved me wrong. I'm thinking, oh my Lord, and then I just started ballooning because that was my place of comfort. And I'd always had a couple pounds I didn't want, because kept people at bay, kept guys from coming on to me. So that was a safe place, but I never really got overweight. But all of a sudden it was like the only place I could turn to where I just felt comforted.
Yeah, you're just getting that hit, right?
That hole inside me that I would always feel when I would be alone, because I was running away from being alone. So I always kept myself busy, occupied, either up in my head, fixing something, or on a project, or working. Where a lot of people, you get to that point in your life where you don't want to feel the feelings that you feel. And so you drink, or you use drugs, or with me, it was work. It was like, wow, I'll just stay busy working, because what a wonderful addiction, because it
I can relate to that.
pays you money. And
It's so much better than, right? That's like what our mind says. It's so much better than, like I could be doing this. Like we just rationalize all of it.
It's okay.
I'm curious to know this part though, because by this time you've already read enough books or talked to enough people. There's something, because most people do not have the awareness of why they're overeating, or like until they do. Does that make sense? So you're saying it now, looking back.
I was looking, I knew there was a part of me that was eating to feel better, to fill that hole, because it would fill the hole. I'd realize for a moment, and then I'd feel worse because I just ate the thing I didn't think I should eat. And so then well, what the hell? I blew it today. Might as well eat more.
And that keeps the story going though, right? Because our brain believes. And so when you're doing it, then you have reason to beat yourself up, because for you, we make it true.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus I was used to being beat up on. And so if there was nobody else around me to beat up on me, then I guess it became my job too.
How fun. So I'm curious. So tell us, I want to keep us there. There's so much to talk about, but I really want to get to where we're going, but I love the story. And I know we could just sit here for probably a couple of hours. I'm curious about you saw him, you realized it, you looked at yourself. Paint a picture for us. I think let us know what. I
was going to say, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this was me sitting
This is in
in
the marriage?
this was, yeah, yeah. Actually, this was in between marriages because I had come out of that marriage feeling just really horrible about myself. And so I immediately hooked up with somebody else who was a little bit overweight. So then that wasn't such an issue. But there were all these other issues that it's like you start into a new relationship
Wow.
with kind of the same person, a little bit different. There were some different things that came up because he wasn't as, you know, looking at me and putting me down for having weight because he had weight. But, you know, there were other things. And I realized that I didn't feel worthy of the relationship. And so I was overcompensating to make sure that that person wasn't going to leave me. And,
Is that where the
and
people pleasing started?
oh, well, my people pleasing started when I was, you know, just tiny. And
Okay.
it just never stopped. It was make everybody else happy and you're not really worthy. So go extra, go the extra mile, do the extra thing, make them like you. Because you can't say no. If you say no, they'll never ask you again. Not a good thing.
So how much weight did you take off?
That
Where
that
does that
was at 330 pounds. And so
wow.
yeah, I think
Interesting. Interesting what this mind gets us to do, right?
yeah, yeah. And it had all kinds of reasons. It was like keep other people away, fill up the hole. I mean, I was so disconnected from my body that I didn't know what hungry felt like. I didn't know what I'd feel like I had an upset stomach. Well, if I eat something, I'll feel better. And it was like
Mm.
no matter what I felt, I would eat something, I would feel better. It would stop that feeling for a minute. And I didn't know what that feeling was. I've gone through the last 3 years, literally kind of like reparenting myself, like
Sure, sure. I can see that.
regrowing up, reliving those, you know, years from 3 to 6 kind of, and I've given myself that time to realize that, you know what, the programming that was put into my brain by the circumstances and the adults around me, it took time to really lay down those deep
Yeah,
neural pathways of how I think. And so it's going to take time to rewire that stuff,
sure, sure.
to become aware of it. And then once I'm aware of it, then what do you do? Because you know,
That's thank God for this work.
I went to talk therapist, and I swear to you, for years it was like, uh-huh, mm-hmm. Well, you know, you might be codependent. I'm like, I don't know what that means. What's that mean? What's that mean? He didn't look at me and say, well, it means do you feel like you got to people please all the time? Do you feel like you're not good enough? Do you feel like it was just a word? And I'm thinking, well, my husband's an alcoholic, so I don't know, maybe it has something to do with that. And what he left me with, the therapist left me with was, you can't fix this, you can't change it, you can't cure it, but I'll be here for you for the rest of your life. And I remember in that moment thinking, there's something wrong with this. I mean, it just felt there
Just
was
no
a minute.
tools though, right? It's just we just didn't have the tools, didn't have the
Yeah,
awareness and the tools and the coping skills. And you didn't even know to look for it because you already had the story right already there. And I was wondering,
yep,
like, whenever you talked about like with your business and like how it shows up later is like how much you've diluted your talent because of the earlier situation of like, I'm not good enough, but what I am good at is too much.
yeah, yeah. And so steering away from that. I mean, you know, early on I played the violin. I was really, really good at it. And it wasn't even my first choice. It wasn't something I was passionate about. But it was a place I could hide. You know, as long as I was playing my violin, nobody would bug me or interrupt me. And but I knew they could hear the mistakes I was making, which constantly made me feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And then out of high school, literally my mother looked at me. I mean, I was in the Oakland Symphony by the age of 17, so I wasn't a slacker. But she looked at me and she said, you know, you're not going to be able to make a living at that thing. You might want to find a career. And I thought, oh Lord, I didn't even question it. Just, okay, we'll put that away and we'll do what mommy wants me to do. What do you want me to do? And she introduced me to court reporting because it was something, she knew somebody who did that. And I remember looking at that machine and thinking, okay, they pay you to write that stuff down and you don't have to say anything. You just sit behind the machine and listen to what everybody else says and do it perfectly. You have to do it perfectly. I'm taking in all the bits and pieces and I'm thinking, it was like it hit my checklist
Yeah,
for
yeah.
everything I needed. And so, you know, now I find myself having been trained in all of this stuff, I gravitated back to work with those students because it's like, wow, I know what attracted you to this profession.
Oh, interesting.
And I know that drive to be perfect, but I'll never be perfect. Be better, be faster, be. That what somebody else wants you to do. It's still somebody else's, vision of what they want for you. But I found that safe place, and it was a horrible
It's
ordeal.
comfortable. I know exactly what to do. I know how to do it. I can stay hidden right here. This is safe. It pays. I can, this is good. Let me just stay out of the world's way.
Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that worked really well for quite a while. I push myself back into there. Oh, and if I needed to say no to somebody for something, they didn't understand what I was doing anyway. So it was perfect. It's like, oh no, I'm a court reporter. I can't. I've got this stuff to get out. It's way more important than whatever you're asking me to do. No. So I could say no for that, but I couldn't say no for me.
Such a cop out. We use our work. We use whatever we can. Right. I'm curious about something. This is just personal, but so I know enough about coaching because I've been doing this, and my work is tough, guys. For you who don't know me, we do some deep stuff up in here.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about when we did the coach training, because you have this history.
Yeah. Like, here it comes.
Yeah. And when it got tough in the work we do, and you were turning, because these were turned off. And so as you start turning this on, how was that with how you viewed me? Like, I feel like I'm going in here, but I've had this conversation. Like, I love you all, right? So it's like kind of easy for me to go there because I know the reality of it. And I know how I feel about my coach.
Yeah. Well, I remember early on you saying, to be a good coach, you were going to be that. She says, I'm going to push your buttons. And I'm thinking, well, why would you push our buttons? That's so mean. If you know what our buttons are, leave them alone. But that's not that's what the world does. And so if we want to get past finding that there's a button, seeing that there's a button, trying to figure out what was it that pushed the button, and what does it feel like when you're having the button pushed? It's just a way of helping you become aware of what's going on, because the outside world isn't going to do that. And you're not going to do that because you're trying to run away from what feels uncomfortable in any way you can. And so sitting in a coaching session and in a group, it was like, you'd think it'd be harder in a group, but I kind of felt like my fellow coaches were like, oh, thank God it's her, not me.
So for sure we are.
Sit back and so I felt like they kind of had my back.
Yeah.
I wasn't alone. But there were those moments where it was like your brain changes, and you would tell us when you were coaching with somebody else, now watch her eyes, watch, she's closing down. And I give it about 10 seconds, and it's like, how does she know that? How does she know how my brain works? Because I wrote this down. My whole life, from being a little kid, I wanted to know, why does my brain do what it does? I don't understand. Other people's brains seem to be like different, or maybe they're not bothered by how their brains are doing, but there's something different about my brain. And what I didn't recognize was that even in that little moment, there was an itty bitty twinkling of awareness, but I didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, my brain's doing something.
Right. But what the brain does is it gets defensive, and it's like, she's her, right? It goes right to blame. It's her fault. You're making me feel this way. You're the reason. Because that's what we believe. Like, seriously, like, even though we're not looking and pointing the fingers at our parents or whatever it is, there's that part of the brain that's got, I call it, like, it puts up this militant. It's like the military. It's like, you can't come near me. You can't touch me. We can't see beyond that. And that's why I think the integrative training is so important, because no, we're for sure going to crack through that stuff. We're going to chisel that outside shell, that conditioning that's keeping you in the suffering, so that you can be free, so that you can share with the world like what you've been hiding, these talents and what you have to offer, and this compassion and sensitivity. It almost feels like we were punished for being sensitive because we were misunderstood. And then the brain is like, we should for sure shut down and keep these people out because this is dangerous. And we shut off all of our brilliance, all of our gifts, And so knowing that about you, I've never asked you this question, by the way, for those of you who are watching, I just know, I know by experience when I reach out, and you guys are sometimes surprised because I just kind of show up one day and I'm like, hey, what's going on, or what's happening, or can you hop on a call? And it's like
How did she know
or
that?
what? Yeah, it's like what?
She got my computer and my phone bugged. It's like, yeah,
It's a knowing your people and just like knowing my own brain, knowing my own defense,
mhm,
knowing that little traumatized person inside who had not healed yet, and like how I had to grow. And I take full responsibility for that in this program, that I want to be sensitive and compassionate. And yet I am not going to buy your brain's BS for you, for you.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
want to help you get to the other side. I'm defending you. I'm in the boxing ring with your mind. Like, I'm like, get over here so that her that's inside can come forward. Like, I'm going to go ahead and keep your BS brain right here occupied
yeah,
so that part, like, I'll fight with that part
yeah.
and this part can come. That's that unconscious work. And that's really, the
Right.
big thing I wanted to bring on with you, because you understand this. It's like we really have to understand the way the mind works and what's happening, because we take it personal.
You do. And the funny part is when you were saying that, it reminded me of the fact that our brains, we're going along and that part that puts up the defense that says, no, you're not getting in here. You're not going to hurt her. You stop it. And then things come out of our mouths like, no, that's not true. That's not me. I'm not, I'm fine. Because that part's trying to not let us see and
That's right.
not let that part out. Because if that part comes out, it's convinced that you're going to die. Bad things, horrible things are going to happen. It's going to hurt. Remember, hurt. You know what hurt feels like. It's going to be even worse than that. And what I tell a lot of my clients now is that, because I was afraid. I mean, you're afraid of what you don't know, afraid of what you might discover, afraid of who you might be when you come out.
It's a
And
fear of the light in the shadow.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we spend our entire life hiding our shame. And so it's a fear.
right.
I knock on the door of shame.
Yeah. And
And
it's like,
so I get accused of like being the mom or being the, and all of that stuff. And thank God we have open enough relationships that we can talk about this, but we will, until we die, we will take that shame. The worst thing in the world to your brain is for your shame to be
to be seen.
exposed.
Yeah, to be seen.
And
Yeah.
here I come with a flashlight, knocking on the door.
Yep. And realizing, as I'm thinking back and I'm realizing my brain early on was taught there's nothing wrong in the family, but we can't let anybody on the outside see what's going on in the family.
That's right. That's right.
Like, what?
That's right.
Now I know that's what's called two conflicting thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong, but we're hiding what's not
Well,
wrong.
it's like the part of, I use this example a lot. It's like Uncle Johnny touched me between the legs. So, but you need to be quiet about that, because you're bad if you say that, or if you make them look bad, or like we're supposed to feel bad because they did that to us, right? This
Right.
is so common now. After doing hypnotherapy with so many clients, I know you've experienced this too.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's a really high percentage. I'm not going to guess at it, but it's a really high percentage that
Huge.
at some point in time, this experience has come up even before they were like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that happened. But they could paint the entire room. They knew how they
Mhm.
felt. They knew like all of that stuff. That was so fascinating what we lock away
Yeah.
because of that shame. And I'm here like, no, we're going to shadow dance. Like, come on, let's play in the light and the dark. Let's bring it all. Let's expose all of the parts of ourselves, right? That's a
Yeah.
whole new language for most people. So
Yeah.
how did you shift in between that? Because we found each other through hypnotherapy, our hypnotherapy world. So we're
Yeah.
both on the journey. I was just doing something a little bit different. And
Yeah, well, and I realized even after training to be an RTT hypnotherapist that for me, I didn't have the communication skills. I knew the process of how to get them from, point A to point Z, but I didn't feel the flow in being able to communicate because my communication skills had been shut down at such an early age, and so and that was the same as feeling. Not only could I not feel and express what it was I was feeling, because that wasn't okay, but I didn't even have the vocabulary to try to help somebody else get, to understand that I could sit there and my brain would say, I know what they're feeling. I've been there and I know how scary it is. And I know that once they crack that door open and they look and they'll go, oh, hell, wow. You mean it's just me? And I'm okay
so
and everything's
good.
right and there's no big boogeyman? Oh my Lord, what was I afraid of? My daughter went through a session with somebody else because I didn't want her doing it with me in case I was the reason she was messed up. And I thought she
Oh,
called me.
better. I did my son. I sat here and cried with him. I was like, oh my God, this is
Yeah, but
terrible.
she called me and she said, Mom, it's like somebody just ripped this giant big old blanket off of me and it's been there my whole life. And it's just, was it always that close? And with tears in both of our eyes, it's like, yeah,
Yes.
it was always that close. That
The liberation, the
always,
liberation. And
always.
it's, guys, for those who don't know what we're talking about, so it's the emotional processing technique, the hypnotherapy, the work that we do is on the unconscious. So we go beyond the mind and we get the nerve, we help to stabilize or neutralize the nervous system. So it's not like we're like clucking like a chicken and like, doing these, swinging these clocks back and forth. It's really, our eyes are open. We're looking at each other like we're having conversation. This is I'm talking about the integrative part. The other part is something, but it's really, once they're in that ease and then they allow access, it's been there all along. It's been there all along, but the not allowing the access is where that defense is at. So it's basically like you have lenses on, like I would have like dark colored lenses and I would not be able to see. And once we get there, then it's very, very clear and very obvious. And what happens? They're like, oh my God, everything, the whole view, everything, the way you look at things, the way you see things, the way you feel. It's the most amazing experience to be liberated from a lifetime of trauma, crisis, unresolved things you did not understand. And that's part of the punchline approach. It's like we unveil so we can understand, because awareness is the healer.
Well, and that blew me away when I understood that you weren't, because I just came in like, okay, teach me to be a coach. Like, I didn't know what that was. I just meant I was going to be able to talk to people in a more fluid way or whatever. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she's doing this whole other thing. And then I'm looking back at my hypnosis training and I'm looking at what you're doing. And I'm like, well, this is the same thing. This is amazing. This is the same thing, but without the hypnosis, but it's relax, open your mind, unveil what's going on. It's, navigate, see what's happening. And it was like, how can that do what? Because when I found hypnosis, for me, it was like, wow, big another corner turned, because all of a sudden my conscious mind and my subconscious mind were like looking at the same things that happened to me early, but they were seeing, because they could talk together for the first time, which is what you do also. Because they could look at that same scene together, they could see it for what had happened instead of what my mind interpreted it to mean, which was two totally different things. I'd look back,
which is mind-body connection, right? That's that.
Yeah. So I'd look back at these scenes and I think I always tease when I do a session with somebody that we're not going to solve a murder mystery, probably, because your brain's going to bring you to a scene that you've remembered and shared and bitched about 100 times, something that happened that was mean in your life. But you're going to look at it and see it from a different angle, like a bunch of people watching a car accident at an intersection, and everybody's got their own vision of what happened. It's not like the accident didn't happen. Everybody's point of view is different. So
by whatever lens we're wearing, like these are cheaters, right? So these are 0.5 or 1.5, and some people have, different.
But when you have a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old mind trying to assess what is happening, and then you're 40 years later and you're still operating on the solution that the 5-year-old mind came up with, which worked for a while, but may not be helping you do what you want to do now. And you don't even know what's going on.
You don't know that's the beauty. You don't know what's going on. And I feel like we have this secret access that we just have to share with everyone. Like, it's like unlocking. That's what most of my clients have said. It's like you unlocked something that has just been tucked away forever. Like, I don't know what clicked, what changed. Like, but it's awareness. It's because it's awareness. It's not me. I'm Jen. It's not you. We're just the conduits for that awareness. We hold the space that's really, really safe.
Yeah.
And what I like about the emotional processing technique and the coaching is we're looking at each other with eyes open. We're having conversation. So some
Right.
people are really afraid of walking down the stairs, closing your eyes,
Right.
counting to, they can't. It's just like in yoga. We couldn't touch people in a certain way. You know, if they were in child's pose and we came up behind them, like their nervous system was constantly looking because they
Yeah.
had been in
Yeah.
positions, you know, that were not safe for them. And so
Right.
it's just a beautiful way for really having access to resolve the trauma where
Right.
they are conscious, they're aware, they're awake. Such a beautiful thing. And I love what you're doing because you're marrying the two, you know, together. So you have that access, you know, whenever it's going to be these kind of, I'll say, tough cases.
Yeah.
I do believe the trauma mind is different than the average mind.
Yeah, it
We
is.
freeze, we go fight, flight, freeze, freak.
Freak out.
Can't get out of the freak because we're locked in that emotional signature. And when we're locked in it, we're spinning and looping, spinning and looping, spinning and looping. And we do not know it's a thought. We believe it. We believe it's true. We believe it's real. We believe the story. That's your BS story. We bust that open. So
Right.
I'm noticing we really talked a lot of story. I like to keep these at to be over before the hour just because of those who are watching. So we
Yeah.
can for sure come back on. If anyone has questions, we'll come back on and do it. But I want to talk about um, like as promised that we were coming on here is to understand the mind and
Mm-hmm.
why they stay in the abusive relationships. Why
Oh
we
gosh.
wait until we're 350 pounds or until we get the
Uh,
diagnosis or that sort of thing.
yeah, I had no idea when and you were at the training with me. Our teacher taught us these things called the rules of the mind, and for me that was like brilliant because I thought "Oh, the mind has rules. You know, like if had I known these earlier on, it would have helped me. But and there's a bunch like you know your mind learns by repetition, which is why a little kid, you know, if they hear the story, you know, you can be anything you want to be. You're amazing. You are so beautiful and creative. And look at you. Look what you did. You're fabulous. One kid. Second kid comes along and it's like, you know, can't you ever do anything right? What is wrong with you? You're always bothering me. You know, just get out of here. You're just like your father. You look just like your father. Take those two kids and they started out the same. You know, 30 years later,
Mm,
which one do you think feels really good about themselves and is willing to take chances and dares and get out there and try it? And I failed, whatever, let's try it again. And the other person is like, no, no, not me. No, everything that's not, they can do it, but I can't do it, which is, you know, another one of the flaws. You know, we're not good enough, we can't connect, or everything's available to everybody else but not to us. But here are these rules of the mind. You learn by repetition, or your mind wants to keep you in what's familiar and absolutely keep you away from what's unfamiliar. And so like with abusive relationships or all a job you don't like, your brain is telling you, and my court reporting students that you know are stuck in a speed and can't get out of school, your brain is telling you that where we are right now we should just stay. It's not happy, it's not healthy, you know, things are happening and you cry, but it's going to be okay because we're just
yeah.
going to stay right
It's
here
better than, right?
because you have no idea how bad it could be out there. You know, let's imagine the worst things possible that can happen because I'm really good at that up here. Every
Yeah.
bad thing that's possible is cataloged and
Right, right,
waiting
right.
for me to tell you. So stay right where you are, even if it's abusive, hurtful, painful, because it could be worse.
Could be worse. That's it. That's
Just-
it. That's what you should be grateful for what you have because,
That's
and
right.
then that's what we're taught. So I refer a lot to the work of Bruce Lipton because, you know, that's the biology of belief is
Right.
we were hypnotized. Like by the time we were 7 to 9 years old, this has been done. So you guys who are afraid of hypnosis, just know you are already hypnotized, that we are
We
just like
were.
brainwashing you. We're literally
Yeah.
washing the
Yeah.
conditioning off of your brain so that you can actually be in safety, be in ease, be who you are in your
Right.
natural essence. But I also wanted to talk to you to let you a moment about that. So that's kind of like the belief of people like really getting out there, putting themselves out there, making something of their life. But
Yeah.
let's talk about it in the sense of chronic pain because there's people who believe that they will not heal, that they like. So
Oh
I
my
talk to, I
goodness.
have a lot of followers who are like, they understand TMS, which is the mind body syndrome. And it's
Huh?
basically that your brain creates the pain in your body and it hops and skips and moves because you're repressing the emotion.
Right.
How would you, in your words,
Oh my goodness.
explain
Um,
this?
I was going to say and it's so funny because here I am. And if you told 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, right? I was going through a whole lot of stress in my life. I was doing everything wrong, eating wrong, not getting enough sleep, not getting exercise, and went to the doctor and it's like, yeah, you got fibromyalgia. And I'm like, what is, I don't know what it is. It just hurts. It hurts everywhere and it moves and it changes. And
Right.
I was lucky I got diagnosed early, but, um, and he told me, I'm not going to put you on pain medication because then you're just going to want more and more and more, and it's still not going to fix the problem. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? I didn't understand. I just knew I hurt. And there was this thing in the back of my head that says, isn't this interesting that you had this horrible problem at work? You wanted to go on disability. Somebody mentioned you wanted to go on disability. And within 2 months, I had fibromyalgia. Now, it had been coming on for 2 years. But it was like all of a sudden something in my brain said, yeah, that'll work. Let's do that. And boom, I was in full blown body trauma. And that went on for a couple of years. And I remember one day, now I didn't know anything else other than I'm kind of naturally stubborn. One day I kind of woke up and I said, I'm tired of this shit. I don't want
Mm,
this anymore. I don't like this anymore. I'm going to
mm.
start eating different. I'm going to start moving more. I'm going to start, I don't know. I just went back to the doctor's list and just said, I'm going to change all this stuff. And because I was just angry at it, but I didn't know that I had,
Yep. So basically you did all of the work before you came to the hypnotherapy and like all of the, you did it. It's just that once you came to the realization, like kind of trying to figure out like what the heck happened here, then you found the resources. So now you can tell people from the before, the after, and it made
yeah.
sense. Yeah, I agree.
And
Same with me.
I sit there and I think, oh my gosh, now I know what I accidentally did. I stumbled on it, and wow, people have to know this because why should you stumble for 20 years?
I
You
know.
should if
You
you're
think we
going.
would have listened? Like, I think I would have listened. I was looking everywhere. I mean, I was like, I needed to belong so badly. Like, I was in the AA group. Like, yep, my name is Kim. I'm an alcoholic. Yep, I'm a codependent. Like, I was in all of the groups. I just needed to belong
Yep,
somewhere. I didn't have a place in this world, and
yeah,
so I didn't care if it was a diagnosis, if it was bipolar, if it was. It didn't matter. It's like I just you had to give me a label of my brokenness, like because there's something wrong with me. I've
there
had
must
need
be a word
surgeries.
for this. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what we're told, right? There was a defect,
yeah,
and it's like, so we have to find it. And if the doctor can give us the label or we can, understand it, then it's going to
right,
make sense. Like our brains, like finally found what's wrong with us. And so we
yeah,
spent our whole life in chronic pain, in disease, in illness. I was there. I was
yeah,
one of you. Like I'm telling you, I was on
yeah,
so much medication for so many years, and
I,
fibromyalgia also.
yeah, yeah. I think that maybe is our biggest hurdle, Kim, is that, you know, this is the stuff that I was always looking for that nobody just said, here, Carrie, here. Here it
Yeah.
is. It'll fix everything. It'll help you. You'll feel good about yourself. You're going to have a life like you were always intended to have, but all this other shit came along. But here it is. And they can't understand that here it is,
I
how
wonder
do
if they
you
know though. Like, I don't know if everyone, I don't think, I think it's an awareness. Like, I don't know that it was, I'm telling you, I paid the counselors. I went to the
oh,
doctors. I went to the psychotherapist.
me too.
I did everything. I went to the priest. I went to
Yep,
like the
yep,
marriage counselors. We did it all. I
everybody.
tried everything.
Anybody, yeah, and but just stumbling along the way and then finding the reason. Oh, that's why that worked. This is
Oh.
why that worked, and it could have worked at any time, along the way. Yeah,
Well, I think I am a great proponent of it happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen when it's supposed to
well, it
happen.
does.
We met when we were supposed to meet,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
already doing this work. You were doing, and I was like, I need some team. Who else wants to help me do this? Because I
yeah,
mean, there was so much need for it. I instantly saw like I needed to step into the practitioner role, to help
yes,
because
yeah,
what I had found in the way of doing it was unique and different, and it was so easy.
yeah,
It made way more sense. It was like bringing that whole pie piece back together, just like what happens with our minds, right? Like
yeah,
our whole bodies and mind, we're split up. Religion has our spirituality. The doctors have our
yeah,
bodies. The psychiatrist has our minds, and we're not treated as a whole. And the work that we do, and like the hypnotherapy with the coaching session and the integrative emotional
yeah,
processing technique,
the whole.
it's seamless. Like it just brings that back to wholeness. And then the nervous system can relax, the mind can be at ease.
And I was just thinking, for me, the hypnosis. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. But there's that heal for those with severe trauma from childhood, when you, okay, now I have a realization, but there's still that part of your brain that keeps wanting to, it's like, wait a minute, no, but what about me? I've been trying to protect you for all these years. And it's some of the stuff that I still do. It's just, it's automatic. And I'll realize my amygdala is firing before I even have a chance to, what happened?
Yeah.
It still triggers you. It's just becoming aware. And that's where the mindset stuff is just invaluable.
For me, it was the integration of it. It was the fact that there were these unresolved emotions that had not been processed and had not been integrated. So those parts of ourselves were left out because we eject ourselves because it's not safe to be in the body. And so the technique, I was at my end. I was 35 years in on this self-help stuff and done all of the things, all the energy work, the hypnotherapy, all of it. I'm telling you, there's nothing. That's why I teach so passionately. There's nothing I didn't try. But the secret was the integration and the embodiment of the spirituality. I was not in my body, and we have to embody the work.
Yep. Yeah, without your body, then you're just up in your head. And that's the part that thinks it's trying to help you. It thinks it can solve everything. Just ask it. It'll tell. I didn't even know my thoughts weren't my thoughts. I thought every thought that went through my head was my thoughts. It's like, I have choice over what I think.
Well, it's that we have 600,000 a day, but it's the ones that align with our beliefs that we latch onto and then hook it in that emotional signature. And then we spin and loop and we think it's truth. And then we don't understand what's wrong with us, but it's because we don't see. Listen, we're going to have to keep talking about this. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure they know where to find you. We can come back on. Let's do this. Let's just plan to guys, you let us know if you want us to follow up, because we were just getting to the juicy part. That is my absolute favorite thing to talk about, because I was locked. I felt like I was locked in hell for so long. I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
And now we want to share it with the world because it's such amazing work. And, I'm thinking of, like, when we talk about it takes 7 to 9 years to hypnotize, it also takes 7 to 9 years to hypnotize into the person back in other words, like to re-identify or to reinvent yourself. And so it's not to say like, oh my God, you're not going to get any help for it, and it's going to take that long. That's not what we're saying at all. You start the work with the hypnotherapy, you go inside, you get the awareness, then you do the processing so that it becomes the new neural pathway.
And you get comfortable with the new you, which was always you, which is wonderful. I mean, having that support, I still need it. There are those days,
we're so lucky. Our community is so lucky that we can meet
each other.
It's because that's, to me, was the biggest thing, is we have an epidemic of loneliness, even in the self-help world. Like you're figuring out this new stuff, you're becoming this new identity. And then you're like, your friends are changing, the way you were before. Does it relate to your family? Like, and then before you know it, like you're by yourself, you feel so lonely and isolated. You feel like a weirdo, like, oh my God, no one, like I talk a different language.
How do you deal with your family when you start becoming aware of things that you were never aware of and working your way through those? And
that's the shadow. It's not cool to think that. They do not want you go in there, right? Because then that's revealing the family secrets, just breaking the tribal rules.
Just stick with the rules, Carrie.
Okay, so give these gals an idea of where they can find you. For sure, I'm going to let y'all know we're in the More Than Mindset group. You can come here, tag Carrie. You look at her up. She's in here. She's doing videos and stuff. We're teaching the entire community there. But I'm going to mention what you say in the show notes also.
Okay, that's actually the easiest place to find me. Is just is here. But I'm also just on regular Facebook under Carrie Hewerdine. I can give you my email address. It's RTT, as in Rapid Transformational Therapy, RTT Remind Me, which
we'll put that in the show notes, guys, so you don't have to write it down. I'll go ahead and plug all that in. Carrie is in California. She works virtually.
Like everybody else right now.
And as far as the people that you help, it's basically just healing childhood trauma. Is it is it overweight? Is it anyone?
I've done a little bit of everything. I found, which is kind of odd, because I don't like advertise the weight loss stuff, because I realized how it took me to get to where do I really want to lose the weight? Why am I hanging on to the weight? So I don't know. What I found is that the people who need what I've found is who finds me.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, you're not limited to any particular class of people or any age or anything. You know how they're all like in the niche thing. I'm like, you know what, guys, that niche, and It's not
Yeah.
all that. It can make you spin in a lot of stuff. What's important is that you find your gift, identify what it is, go out and help the world.
Yeah.
And for some, when it gets super busy, then you can narrow down your niche. When you don't, like what I had to do, I had so many
Right.
clients coming in, I couldn't manage it. And I was like, oh my God, I need to teach other people how to do this so that we can help these people. So
Yeah.
you're saying that it's, if they
Yeah.
find themselves stuck,
Yeah.
if they're
Yep.
feeling chronic pain,
Yep.
whether it's weight, relationships, they don't know why they keep sabotaging their success, anything
Right.
else?
Right. There could be people who just, I don't know, something just doesn't feel
Mm,
okay. It just, there's like this, like my daughter, this blanket on top of me, and I don't understand it, whatever it is. Because
I
then
love
I'm
that.
thinking there are other people in our group that are phenomenal at nutrition and at weight loss, and I know they're on this call, and so they should go, work with those people, because that's a thing that they're really passionate and excited about. And like you, if I've got more people than I can work with, then yeah, I, I'm kind of going to gravitate, if I have my choices, to the people who are 5 years old inside and still crying and
Oh
hurting.
my God, I love that. 5 years old inside and still crying. So you know who you are. You have this story. You don't understand why it's, I used to call it like being in a trash can with a lid on it.
Oh yeah.
It was really dark. And then one day it
Mm,
was like, what? Like, just like your daughter said, the wet blanket. So if
yeah.
you're just not sure what it is, maybe you have everything you've ever wanted and you just can't find joy. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just kind of
Yeah.
this darkness that lingers
I
around. Or like me,
know. Yeah.
everywhere as you go, she follows you. That was mine. I kept trying to get away from myself. And I was like, what's happening?
Everywhere I go, there I am. What the hell?
Yeah. And it's super, it doesn't have to be this big traumatic event. It's usually you took on a belief that someone said, like mine was, I talk too much. And look at my career now. My career is talking too much.
And
I
mine
talk
was
too
don't
much.
talk. Yeah.
I talk too much. I'm too busy. Like I'm too busybodied. I'm too, like I need to calm down, settle down. I need
Who
to
do
be
you think
still. I
you
need to be
are?
quiet. I shouldn't be seen.
Yeah.
Right. And then here I am, like 5'9", size 11 shoe, like, like doing all this stuff. And I was like, that was very scary to be seen,
Oh yeah.
and I think hypnotherapy for that, that was really a breakthrough for
That
me
was
to identify that.
the first session I worked on with another practice therapist was my voice. Could I get, like, for it to be okay for me to talk? Ah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it worked,
And it's
obviously.
funny how you'll have thyroid trouble whenever you're working on that. You'll have
Well,
like this, it literally is in your communication center. All
you're
right. We really have gone to the last minute. So I want to honor everyone's time, and y'all let us know if you want Carrie to come back on. I'll be happy to revisit this conversation. Sorry, we got excited at the end.
it was fun.
Bye.
Thank you guys.